My name is Sarah, and I'm 22 years old. Until 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family. My dad, Michael, was a successful insurance agent in our small town of Riverside, Oregon. My mom, Linda, worked part time as a librarian and spent most of her energy making our house feel like a home. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and more importantly, we were happy. Or so I thought. The morning that would destroy everything I believed about my family started like any other Tuesday in March. I had graduated from community college the previous semester and was working part-time at a local coffee shop while figuring out my next steps. It was one of those rare days when I didn't have to be at work until the evening shift, so I was enjoying sleeping in when I heard raised voices downstairs. "Michael, you're going to be late again." My mother's voice drifted up the stairs, tinged with the kind of exasperation that comes from years of repeating the same conversation. I know," came my father's reply, but he sounded irritated rather than apologetic. "I just wish someone would think to make me a lunch once in a while. I'm tired of spending $15 every day on mediocre sandwiches." I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. "Michael, I work too, and I made you lunch every day for the first 15 years of our marriage. Maybe it's time you learn to make your own." The front door slammed with more force than necessary, and I heard my father's car backing out of the driveway with the kind of aggressive acceleration that suggested he was angrier than the situation warranted. My mother's footsteps echoed up the stairs, and I heard their bedroom door close quietly. Not slammed, my mother wasn't the slamming type, but closed with the deliberate softness that somehow felt more final than any amount of noise. I lay in bed for another 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the exchange I'd overheard. It wasn't like my parents to snap at each other over something so trivial. Sure, they'd had their disagreements over the years. What couple hadn't? But they'd always seemed to work through things with conversation and compromise. My father asking for lunch didn't seem unreasonable, but neither did my mother's response. She had been making his lunch every day until recently, when she'd started taking on extra hours at the library to help save for my potential transfer to a 4-year university. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much tension had been building in our house over the past few months. Little things I dismissed at the time suddenly seemed more significant. My father coming home later and later from work, claiming he was putting in extra hours to boost his commission. My mother's increasing complaints about feeling like she was managing the household alone. The way they seemed to talk around each other rather than to each other during dinner. As I lay there analyzing my parents' relationship, an idea began to form in my mind. My father's complaints about having to buy lunch every day weren't really about the money. His insurance business was doing well, and $15 was hardly going to bankrupt us. It was about feeling like no one cared enough to do something nice for him. Maybe what he really needed was a gesture that showed he was appreciated and thought of. I decided to surprise him with lunch. By 10 o'clock, I was in the kitchen, preparing my father's favorite meal, a turkey and Swiss sandwich on sourdough bread with spicy brown mustard, a small bag of salt and vinegar chips, a chocolate chip cookie from the batch my mother had made over the weekend, and a bottle of the flavored water he'd been drinking lately. I wrapped everything carefully in brown paper and wrote, "From your favorite daughter," on the outside with a smiley face. The drive to my father's office took about 15 minutes through downtown Riverside. His agency was located in a modern brick building that housed several small businesses, including a dental practice, an accounting firm, and a real estate office. I'd been there many times over the years, sometimes to drop off forgotten documents, sometimes just to say hello when I was running errands nearby. The building had always felt familiar and safe, a place where my successful father conducted the business that provided for our family. I parked in the visitors section and grabbed the lunch bag, feeling pleased with myself for thinking to do something nice. Maybe this small gesture would help ease whatever tension was building between my parents. Maybe it would remind my father that he was loved and appreciated, and he'd go home that evening in a better mood. Maybe it would be the first step toward getting our family back to the easy happiness we'd always shared. I walked into the building's lobby, where Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who managed the front desk for all the businesses, greeted me with her usual warm smile. "Sarah, how lovely to see you, dear. Here to visit your father?" "Just dropping off lunch," I said, holding up the brown bag. "Is he in?" "Oh yes, he's in his office. You know the way." I walked down the familiar hallway toward my father's office, which was located at the end of the corridor. The building was quiet except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of a dental drill from Dr. Martinez's practice. As I approached my father's door, I could hear voices inside. My father's voice and what sounded like a woman and children. That wasn't unusual. My father often met with families to discuss their insurance needs, and spring was typically a busy time for people reviewing their policies. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door opened. What I saw in that moment would replay in my mind thousands of times over the following months. Each detail burned into my memory with painful clarity. A woman emerged from my father's office, probably in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length blonde hair and a bright floral dress. She was pretty in an understated way, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Behind her came two children, a little girl who looked to be about 4 years old, and a young man who appeared to be in his early 20s. The young man was in a wheelchair and had the unmistakable features of someone with a developmental disability. But it wasn't the presence of this family that made my blood run cold. It was what happened next. The little girl, who had been holding a stuffed animal and chattering excitedly about something, suddenly broke free from the woman's hand and ran back toward my father. "Daddy, you forgot to give me my hug," she called out in that clear, sweet voice that only children possess. "Daddy." I felt the lunch bag slip from my suddenly numb fingers as I watched my father, scoop up this little girl and spin her around exactly the way he used to do with me when I was small. The child giggled and threw her tiny arms around his neck, and he kissed the top of her head with the same tenderness I'd seen him show me 1,000 times. "I would never forget your hug, princess," he said softly, and I could hear the genuine love in his voice. The woman watched this interaction with the same expression my mother got when she watched my father and me together. Pure contentment and love. When my father set the little girl down, the woman stepped closer to him and he wrapped one arm around her waist and used the other to pat the young man in the wheelchair on the shoulder. "Thanks for lunch, honey," the woman said, reaching up to straighten my father's tie in a gesture so intimate and familiar that it took my breath away. "Emma was so excited to come see your office." "Anytime," my father replied, and then he leaned down and kissed her. Not a quick, polite kiss, but a real kiss. The kind shared by people who are deeply in love. I stood frozen in the hallway, my back pressed against the wall, watching this impossible scene unfold. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe the little girl was confused. Maybe she called all grown-ups daddy. Maybe this woman was a client and my father was just being friendly. But even as my mind scrambled to find rational explanations, my heart knew the truth. I had seen my father with my mother thousands of times over the years. I knew what love looked like, what genuine affection and intimacy looked like. And I was seeing it now, between my father and this woman I had never seen before, with these children who called him daddy. I watched as they walked toward the lobby together, my father's hand resting protectively on the woman's lower back, the little girl skipping alongside them while chattering about wanting to go to the park. The young man in the wheelchair was talking excitedly about something he'd learned in his therapy session that morning, and my father was listening with the same patient attention he'd always given me when I wanted to tell him about my day. They looked like a family. They moved together with the easy comfort of people who had done this routine many times before. And my father looked happy, genuinely, completely happy in a way that I suddenly realized I hadn't seen him look at home in months. I followed them at a distance, staying far enough back that they wouldn't notice me, but close enough that I could hear their conversation. They walked through the lobby, past Mrs. Chen, who waved cheerfully at them as if she'd seen them many times before. "Tell Mrs. Chen goodbye, Emma," the woman said. "Bye, Mrs. Chen," the little girl called out. "Daddy's taking us to get ice cream." Mrs. Chen waved back. "Have fun, sweetheart." They knew each other. This wasn't the first time this family had been here. Mrs. Chen, who had worked in this building for over a decade and knew everyone who came and went, was familiar with these people, which meant this had been going on for a while. I followed them out to the parking lot, keeping my distance and using parked cars as cover. I watched as my father helped the young man transfer from his wheelchair into the passenger seat of a silver SUV I had never seen before. He folded the wheelchair with practiced ease and loaded it into the back of the vehicle, clearly familiar with the routine. The woman was buckling the little girl into a car seat in the back, and I could hear her reminding Emma about using her inside voice in the ice cream shop. My father closed the passenger door and walked around to where the woman was standing. "I'll pick up groceries on my way home tonight," he said, pulling her close again. "Anything special you want me to get?" Just the usual, she replied, leaning into his embrace. Oh, and maybe some of those cookies Emma likes, the ones with the sprinkles. Consider it done. He kissed her forehead, then leaned down to say something to Emma through the car window that made her giggle. Home. He had said home, not your place or the house, but home. As if this other family, this other life was where he truly belonged. I crouched behind a pickup truck, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they would hear it, and watched as my father said goodbye to this family he clearly loved. I watched him wave as they drove away, and I watched his face transform from genuine happiness to something more neutral and controlled as he walked back toward the building. I waited until he was back inside before I stumbled to my car on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. My hands were shaking so badly that it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. And when I finally started the engine, I had no idea where I was supposed to go. I couldn't go home. I wasn't ready to face my mother. Wasn't ready to pretend that everything was normal when my entire world had just been turned upside down. I couldn't go back into my father's office and pretend I had just arrived with lunch, couldn't look him in the eye and act like I hadn't just seen him with his secret family. Instead, I drove aimlessly around town for 2 hours, my mind racing and my heart breaking with each passing minute. I kept trying to find alternative explanations for what I had seen, but every scenario I imagined fell apart under scrutiny. There was no innocent explanation for a child calling my father daddy, for a woman kissing him like a wife, for him having a car seat in a vehicle I'd never seen, for Mrs. Chen knowing them well enough to chat with them casually. My father had another family, while my mother was at home, working extra hours to save for my education and making sure our household ran smoothly. My father was playing house with another woman and her children. While I was worrying about choosing a major and figuring out my future, he was helping another child with homework and attending therapy sessions and buying groceries for another home. The betrayal felt like a physical pain in my chest, making it hard to breathe. But worse than my own hurt was the thought of my mother. My beautiful, trusting mother, who lit up when my father walked through the door each evening, who had spent 23 years building a life with a man who was apparently building another life somewhere else. How long had this been going on? Months? Years? The little girl looked to be about 4, which meant this relationship had been developing for at least 5 years. The young man appeared to be in his early 20s, which raised even more disturbing questions about the timeline of my father's deception. And what about me? All those times I'd complained that we never took family vacations, never went to theme parks like other families, never seemed to have money for the extras that my friends' families enjoyed. Had my father been saving his money and vacation time for his other family? Had he been dividing his resources between 2 households while making my mother feel guilty for wanting to work fewer hours? As the sun began to set, I finally drove home. I wasn't ready for the conversation that needed to happen, but I couldn't stay away forever. My mother would be wondering where I was, and my father would be coming home soon, probably planning to act like nothing had changed. I pulled into our driveway and sat in my car for several minutes, staring at the house that had always been my safe haven. The yellow cottage with its white trim and carefully maintained garden looked exactly the same as it had that morning. But I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Inside, I found my mother in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She looked up when I walked in, and her face immediately filled with concern. "Sarah, honey, you look terrible. Are you feeling all right?" I must have looked as devastated as I felt. My eyes were probably red from crying, my face pale from shock, my entire demeanor radiating the kind of emotional trauma that a mother recognizes instantly. "I'm fine," I lied, but my voice came out hollow and unconvincing. "Just tired." She studied my face for a moment longer, then set down her wooden spoon and walked over to me. "What's wrong? And don't tell me nothing. I've been your mother for 22 years. I know when something is bothering you." I wanted to tell her. The words were right there, pushing against my teeth, demanding to be spoken. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. I needed time to process what I had seen, time to figure out how to break news that would destroy her world. "Just work stuff," I said weakly. "Drama with my manager." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she also didn't push. That was one of the things I had always loved about my mother. She gave people space to work through their problems, trusting that they would come to her when they were ready. "Well, dinner will be ready soon. Your father should be home any minute." The casual mention of my father made my stomach lurch. I excused myself and went upstairs to my room, where I locked the door and finally allowed myself to break down completely. I cried for my mother, who was downstairs making dinner for a man who was living a lie. I cried for myself, for the loss of the father I had thought I knew. I cried for that little girl, Emma, who clearly adored the man she knew as daddy but had no idea that he had another family. I even cried for the woman with the kind eyes, who probably believed she was in a committed relationship with a single father. But most of all, I cried for the family I thought we were, for the trust that had been shattered, for the future that would now look completely different than anything I had imagined. 20 minutes later, I heard my father's car in the driveway. I heard the front door open, heard his cheerful, "Hello, beautiful," as he greeted my mother, heard her laugh at something he said. I heard the sounds of a normal evening in a normal family, and it made me feel sick. I stayed in my room through dinner, claiming I had a headache. My mother brought me a plate and some aspirin, stroking my hair gently as she had when I was little. "Feel better, sweetheart. You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" I nodded, not trusting my voice, and she kissed my forehead before leaving me alone. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of my parents getting ready for bed. I heard my father brushing his teeth, heard my mother setting out her clothes for the next day, heard them talking quietly about their plans for the weekend. Normal domestic sounds that now felt like evidence of the most elaborate lie I had ever encountered. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father spinning that little girl around, saw him kissing another woman, heard him talking about home in reference to a place that wasn't our house. By the time my parents' alarm went off at 6:30 the next morning, I had made my decision. I was going to confront him. I couldn't live with this secret, couldn't pretend that everything was normal, couldn't watch my mother continue to live in ignorance. But I also couldn't tell her without giving my father a chance to explain himself first. Maybe there was something I didn't understand, some context that would make this less devastating than it appeared. Maybe he was planning to tell her himself, and I could convince him to do it sooner rather than later. Even as I told myself these things, I knew I was grasping at straws. There was no innocent explanation for what I had seen. But I owed it to my father, to the man who had raised me and loved me and been my hero for 22 years, to hear his side of the story before I destroyed his marriage. I listened to my parents' morning routine through the thin walls of our old house. My mother was up first, as always, padding quietly to the kitchen to start coffee. My father followed 20 minutes later, and I could hear them talking softly about their respective plans for the day. My mother mentioned that she had to work late because of a book fair at the library. My father said he might be home late himself because of a client meeting. A client meeting. I wondered if that was true, or if he was planning to have dinner with his other family. After they both left for work, I spent the morning in a haze of anxiety and dread. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Not the book I tried to read, not the television shows I attempted to watch, not the household chores I used to distract myself. Everything felt surreal, like I was living in someone else's life. Around noon, I decided I couldn't wait until evening to have this conversation. I needed to know the truth now, before I lost my nerve or talked myself out of confronting him. I called my father's office. "Riverside Insurance, this is Michael speaking." Hearing his voice, the same warm, familiar voice that had read me bedtime stories and given me pep talks before big tests, made my throat tighten with emotion. "Dad, it's me. Can I come by your office this afternoon? I need to talk to you about something." There was a brief pause. "Is everything all right, sweetheart? You sound upset." "I just need to talk to you. Are you free around 3? "Of course. I'll make sure my schedule is clear. Should I be worried?" I'll see you at 3, okay?" I hung up before he could ask any more questions, then spent the next 3 hours pacing around the house, rehearsing what I was going to say. No matter how I approached it, there was no way to make this conversation easy or comfortable. I was about to accuse my father of the worst kind of betrayal, and I was going to have to look him in the eye while I did it. At 2:45, I drove to his office for the second time in less than 24 hours. This time, Mrs. Chen looked surprised to see me. "Back again so soon, dear?" "I need to talk to my dad about something important." Something in my tone must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation because her expression became more concerned. "Of course, sweetheart. He's waiting for you." I walked down the hallway on unsteady legs, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I reached my father's office, I knocked and waited for his permission to enter. "Come in, Sarah." He was sitting behind his desk, but he stood up when I walked in and came around to hug me. The hug felt different now, Not because he was hugging me differently, but because I knew he had hugged another child the day before with the same tenderness. "Sit down, honey. What's going on?" I took the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I had sat countless times over the years when I visited him at work. He sat back down behind his desk, and for a moment we just looked at each other. He was my father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with math homework and walked me down the aisle at my high school graduation. But he was also a stranger, a man capable of deception on a scale I had never imagined possible. "Dad," I began and then stopped. My carefully rehearsed words had evaporated, leaving me with nothing but the raw truth. "Sarah, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" I took a deep breath and met his eyes. "Yesterday, when I came to bring you lunch, I saw you with another family. I saw a little girl call you daddy. I saw you kiss a woman who isn't my mother." The change in his expression was immediate and dramatic. The color drained from his face, his mouth fell open slightly, and his eyes filled with what I could only describe as panic. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I could practically see his mind racing, trying to figure out how to respond. "Sarah, he started, then stopped. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as something he did when he was extremely stressed. "Who are they, Dad?" I asked quietly. "Who is that woman? Who are those children?" He was quiet for so long that I began to think he wasn't going to answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think." "What do I think, Dad? Because what I think is that you have another family. What I think is that you've been lying to me and Mom for years. What I think is that everything I believed about our family is a lie." He flinched as if I had slapped him. "Sarah, please, it's complicated." "Then explain it to me. Make me understand how it's complicated for a child to call you daddy. Make me understand how it's complicated for you to kiss another woman." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 22 years of trust that was crumbling with each passing second. Finally, he put his head in his hands and let out a shaky breath. "Her name is Rebecca," he said without looking up. "We met 5 years ago at a conference in Portland. She's a social worker." 5 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. 5 years of deception, 5 years of lying to my mother's face every single day. "The little girl is Emma. She's 4, and the young man is Marcus. He's Rebecca's son from her previous marriage. He has cerebral palsy." "Is Emma your daughter?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He nodded, still not looking at me. "Yes." "Does Rebecca know about us? Does she know you're married?" "No." The word was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "She thinks I'm divorced. She thinks I have joint custody of you, which is why I can't see her every day." The lies kept getting worse. Not only had he betrayed my mother and me, but he had also deceived this other woman and her children. Emma probably went to sleep every night wondering why her daddy could only see her sometimes, not knowing that he had another family he was prioritizing. "How could you do this?" I asked, and I could hear my voice breaking. "How could you lie to all of us for 5 years?" He finally looked up at me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "I never meant for it to happen, Sarah. It started as just a friendship. Rebecca was going through a difficult time with Marcus's medical issues, and I was feeling overwhelmed with work stress and family responsibilities. We just talked at first, but then you decided to have an affair. It wasn't supposed to go that far. It was just supposed to be temporary, just until I figured things out. But then Rebecca got pregnant, and everything became so complicated." "So you decided to live a double life instead of being honest with anyone?" He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't abandon Rebecca and Emma, but I couldn't bear to hurt you and your mother either. I thought I could manage both families, keep everyone happy." "Keep everyone happy?" I stood up, anger finally overriding my shock and hurt. "Dad, nobody is happy. You're living a lie. Rebecca thinks she's with a single father, and Mom is working extra hours to help pay for my education while you're spending money on another family." "I know," he said miserably. "I know it's wrong. I know I should have handled it differently. But I was in too deep before I realized how bad it had gotten." "You were in too deep the moment you decided to cheat on my mother. Everything after that was a choice to make it worse." We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us crying. I had imagined this conversation dozens of times since the night before, but I had never imagined feeling so empty, so hollowed out by disappointment and grief. "Are you going to tell your mother?" he asked eventually. The question hung in the air between us. Was I going to tell her? Could I tell her? What would happen to our family if I did? I don't know, I answered honestly. I came here hoping you would tell me this was all a misunderstanding. I came here hoping you would have some explanation that would make sense of what I saw. And now? Now I don't know what to think. I don't know who you are anymore. He reached across the desk as if to take my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear for him to touch me right now, couldn't bear to be comforted by the same hands that had been holding another woman just 24 hours earlier. Sarah, please, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I'm still your father. I still love you more than anything in this world. Do you? I asked. Because yesterday you looked pretty happy with Emma. Yesterday you looked like she was the most important thing in your world. You're both important to me. You and Emma and Marcus and your mother and Rebecca, you're all important to me. That's not how it works, Dad. You can't have two families. You can't make promises to two women and expect to keep them both. You can't be a father to Emma and Marcus while lying to them about who you really are. I know, he said again. I know it's impossible. I know I've made a mess of everything. So what are you going to do about it? He was quiet for a long time, staring down at his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red and swollen, but there was something resolute in his expression. I don't know, he said, but I know I can't keep living like this. It's destroying me, and it's not fair to any of you. It's been destroying you for 5 years, but you've kept doing it anyway. I was a coward. I was selfish and weak, and I took the easy way out every single time I had a choice to do the right thing. I had never heard my father talk about himself this way. For my entire life, he had been the strong one, the one with answers, the one who fixed problems instead of creating them. Seeing him broken and lost was almost as devastating as learning about his secret family. What happens now? I asked. I don't know, he repeated. I need time to think. I need to figure out how to fix this without hurting everyone even more than I already have. Dad, there's no way to fix this without people getting hurt. The damage is already done. The only question now is whether you're going to keep lying or start telling the truth. He nodded slowly. You're right. You're absolutely right. I want you to tell Mom yourself, I said. I want you to be the one to explain this to her. She deserves to hear it from you, not from me. When? Soon. I can't keep this secret for very long. It's not fair to ask me to lie to my mother. I understand. Just give me a few days to figure out how to tell her. Please. I stood up to leave, feeling emotionally drained and physically exhausted. Dad, why wasn't our family enough for you? He looked up at me with such pain in his eyes that I almost regretted asking the question. It was enough, Sarah. You and your mother were always enough. This was never about you not being enough. This was about me being broken inside, about me making terrible choices because I didn't know how to deal with my problems like an adult. I just don't understand how you could look at Mom every day and lie to her face. I don't understand how you could tuck me in at night and help me with my homework while you were living this other life. I don't understand it either, he said quietly. I've been asking myself the same questions for years. I left his office without saying goodbye, my legs unsteady and my vision blurred with tears. Mrs. Chen looked concerned as I passed her desk, but I couldn't stop to explain. I needed to get home, needed to be alone to process everything I had learned. The drive home was a blur of tears and anger and heartbreak. My father had confirmed my worst fears, but somehow hearing the truth out loud was even more devastating than discovering his secret had been. There was something final about his confession, something that made it impossible to hope that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. When I got home, I went straight to my room and called in sick to work. I couldn't imagine trying to make coffee and chit-chat with customers while my entire world was falling apart. I spent the rest of the afternoon lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what was going to happen next. At 6 o'clock, I heard my mother come home from work. 20 minutes later, I heard my father's car in the driveway. I listened to their normal greeting ritual, his "hello, beautiful," and her asking about his day, and wondered how many more times they would go through this routine before everything changed forever. I stayed in my room through dinner again, but this time my mother didn't just bring me a plate. She sat on the edge of my bed and studied my face with the concerned expression that only mothers can master. Sarah, I know you said this was about work, but you don't look like someone who's having problems with their manager. You look like someone whose heart is breaking. The tenderness in her voice almost undid me completely. I wanted so badly to tell her everything, to unburden myself of this terrible secret and let her help me figure out what to do next. But I had promised my father a few days to tell her himself, and despite everything, I felt obligated to keep that promise. I just need some time to work through some things, I said weakly. I promise I'm okay. She stroked my hair gently. You know, when you were little and you were upset about something, you used to tell me that talking about it made it smaller. Maybe that would help now too. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her love and concern. Mom, do you and Dad ever keep secrets from each other? The question seemed to surprise her. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Small secrets, maybe, like what I'm getting him for his birthday, or if I've eaten the last piece of cake when I was supposed to be on a diet. But important secrets? No, sweetheart. Good marriages are built on honesty. Good marriages are built on honesty. The irony was so painful, I had to bite my lip to keep from crying out loud. Why do you ask? Just wondering about relationships in general, about how people stay together for so long. She smiled softly. Your father and I stay together because we chose each other every single day for 23 years. Because we trust each other completely. Because we've built a life that we're both proud of. Trust. Complete trust. I felt like I was going to be sick. Mom, do you think people can change? Like, if someone does something terrible, can they become a better person? She considered this for a moment. I think people can change, but only if they're truly sorry for what they've done and willing to do the hard work of earning forgiveness. And sometimes, even if someone changes, the relationships they've damaged can't be repaired. Even marriages? Even marriages, sweetheart. Some betrayals are just too big to come back from. I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady. She kissed my forehead and left me alone with my thoughts and the terrible knowledge of what was coming. 3 days passed, and my father said nothing to my mother. I could see the strain on his face, could tell that he was struggling with how to approach the conversation, but I was struggling too. Every meal we shared felt like a lie. Every normal family interaction felt like an elaborate performance. On Friday evening, as we sat around the dinner table making plans for the weekend, my mother mentioned that she had scheduled a family portrait session for the following month. I thought it would be nice to update our photos, she said cheerfully. Sarah's graduated from college now, and we haven't had professional pictures taken since she was in high school. My father went pale. A family portrait, something that would celebrate our family unit, something that would hang on our wall for years to come, something that would memorialize what my mother thought we were. That sounds great, he said weakly, but I could see the panic in his eyes. That night, I knocked on his bedroom door after my mother had gone to sleep. Dad, I need to talk to you. He came out into the hallway, closing the door quietly behind him. What's wrong? You haven't told her yet. It wasn't a question. He looked down at his feet and shook his head. Dad, I can't do this anymore. I can't sit at the dinner table and listen to Mom make plans for our future when I know what's really going on. I can't watch her schedule family portraits when our family is a lie. Sarah, please, I just need a little more time to figure out the right way to do this. There is no right way to do this. There's only the honest way and the dishonest way, and you've been choosing the dishonest way for 5 years. If I tell her, it's going to destroy her. And if you don't tell her, I will, because she deserves to know the truth. He ran his hands through his hair, that familiar stress gesture that had become almost constant over the past few days. What if we could work something out? What if I ended things with Rebecca and just focused on our family? Dad, you have a daughter with Rebecca. You can't just end things with her. Emma didn't choose any of this, and she doesn't deserve to be abandoned. But if I keep seeing Emma, your mother will never be able to forgive me. And she shouldn't have to. Dad, you created an impossible situation. There's no solution that doesn't hurt people because you made choices that guaranteed people would get hurt. I know that. I know I've ruined everything. So stop making it worse by continuing to lie. Tell Mom the truth and let her decide what she wants to do with that information. We stood in the hallway for several more minutes, both of us crying quietly. Finally, he nodded. Tomorrow, he said. I'll tell her tomorrow. But Saturday came and went with no confession. And Sunday, and Monday. On Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I had discovered his secret, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate on anything. The weight of the secret was crushing me, and I knew that if I didn't do something soon, I was going to have a complete breakdown. That morning, after my father left for work, I sat my mother down at the kitchen table. Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be really hard to hear. She immediately looked alarmed. Sarah, you're scaring me. Are you pregnant? Are you sick? No, Mom, it's about Dad. Something in my tone must have prepared her for bad news, because her expression became very still and focused. What about your father? He's been having an affair for 5 years. He has another family. The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. My mother stared at me for a long moment, her face completely blank, as if she was having trouble processing what I had said. That's not possible, she said finally. Your father would never. He's not that kind of man. Mom, I saw them. I saw him with a woman and 2 children. One of them called him Daddy. He admitted it to me when I confronted him. No. The word was firm, absolute. No, Sarah, you must have misunderstood something. There has to be an explanation. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs I had taken from across the parking lot. Photos I had been carrying around for a week like evidence of a crime. Photos of my father kissing another woman, holding another child, loading a wheelchair into an unfamiliar vehicle. My mother stared at the phone screen for a long time, her face growing paler with each image. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were filled with a pain so deep it took my breath away. How long have you known? She asked quietly. A week. I wanted Dad to be the one to tell you. I kept asking him to tell you the truth, but he wouldn't do it. A week. She repeated the words as if she couldn't quite believe them. You've known for a week, and you've been sitting at this table with me, eating meals with me, listening to me talk about family portraits and weekend plans. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me immediately. You could have saved me from making a fool of myself for another week. Her words hit me like a slap. I had thought I was protecting her by giving my father the chance to confess himself, but instead, I had made her feel foolish and betrayed by both of us. You're right, I said. I should have told you right away. I'm sorry. She stood up from the table and walked to the window, her arms wrapped around herself as if she was cold. For several minutes, she just stood there looking out at our garden, at the life she had built with a man who had been lying to her for 5 years. What's her name? She asked without turning around. Rebecca. She's a social worker. The little girl is Emma. She's 4 and she's Dad's daughter. The young man is Marcus. He's Rebecca's son from a previous marriage and he has cerebral palsy. Does she know about us? No. Dad told her he was divorced and that he had joint custody of me. My mother let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Joint custody, so he's been lying to her too? Yes. And this has been going on for 5 years? Yes. She was quiet for a long time, and I could see her shoulders shaking. When she finally turned around, her face was streaked with tears, but her expression was determined rather than devastated. I want to see them, she said. I want to see this other family. Mom, are you sure that's a good idea? I need to see her face, Sarah. I need to see this woman who's been sleeping with my husband. I need to see these children who call him Daddy. How are we going to do that? She thought for a moment, then picked up her purse. We're going to his office. If he sees them regularly during work hours, maybe we'll get lucky. The drive to my father's office was silent except for my mother's quiet crying. I kept glancing over at her, worried that she was going to fall apart completely, but she seemed to be holding herself together through sheer force of will. We parked across the street from his office building and waited. I wasn't sure what we were hoping to see, or what my mother planned to do if Rebecca and her children showed up, but I knew better than to argue with her. She needed to see this for herself, needed to make it real in her mind. We didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, the silver SUV I remembered from the week before pulled into the parking lot. Rebecca got out first, then walked around to help Marcus with his wheelchair. Emma bounded out of her car seat and ran straight to the building entrance, clearly familiar with the routine. My mother watched this entire scene with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of pain, anger, and something that looked almost like fascination. She's pretty, my mother said quietly. Mom? No, she is. She's younger than me, prettier than me. I can see why he would choose her. Mom, this isn't about you not being enough. This is about Dad making terrible choices. Is it, though? If I had been enough for him, would he have needed to find someone else? I turned in my seat to face her fully. Mom, listen to me. This has nothing to do with you not being enough. Dad said so himself. He said you were always enough, that this was about him being broken inside. She was crying harder now. 23 years, Sarah. I gave him 23 years of my life. I supported his career, I raised his child, I made our house a home, and he was building another life the entire time. We sat in the car watching the building entrance, waiting to see if they would come back out. My mother asked me to tell her everything I knew about Rebecca and her children, so I repeated the conversation I'd had with my father. She listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification about details. Cerebral palsy, she said when I finished. That's a lot of work, a lot of medical appointments and therapy sessions. She probably needed help, needed someone to lean on. That doesn't excuse what Dad did. No, it doesn't, but it helps me understand how it happened. Your father always had a savior complex. He liked feeling needed. An hour later, they emerged from the building. This time, my father was with them. Even from across the street, I could see him laughing at something Emma had said, could see him helping Marcus navigate a curb in his wheelchair. He looked relaxed and happy, the way he used to look with our family before the stress and tension of the past few months. My mother made a sound that was part gasp, part sob. He looks like he loves them. Mom, we don't have to watch this. Yes, we do. I need to see all of it. We watched as my father helped load Marcus in his wheelchair back into the SUV, watched him spin Emma around when she asked for airplane rides, watched him kiss Rebecca goodbye. When they drove away, my father stood in the parking lot for a moment, watching them leave, his face soft with affection. He's never looked at me that way, my mother whispered. Not in years. Mom, that's not true. Yes, it is. We've become roommates, Sarah. We go through the motions of being married, but there's no passion anymore, no excitement. With them, he looks alive. I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she was wrong, but I couldn't deny what we had both just witnessed. I want to go home, my mother said. I need to think about what I'm going to do. The drive home was even quieter than the drive there. My mother seemed lost in thought, and I was too emotionally drained to attempt conversation. When we pulled into our driveway, she turned to me with a determined expression. When your father comes home tonight, I'm going to confront him. I want you there with me. Are you sure? I'm sure. This affects you too, Sarah. You deserve to be part of this conversation. That evening, we waited for my father in the living room. My mother had spent the afternoon alternating between crying and cleaning. Stress cleaning, she called it. Our house had never been more spotless, but she looked like she had aged 10 years in one day. At 6:15, my father walked through the front door with his usual cheerful greeting. Hello, beautiful. How was your day? He stopped short when he saw us sitting on the couch, both of us looking grim and serious. What's going on? He asked, but I could see in his eyes that he already knew. Sit down, Michael, my mother said quietly. We need to talk. He remained standing, his face going pale. Linda, Sit down. Her voice was calm but authoritative, and my father sat down in the armchair across from us like a scolded child. I know about Rebecca, my mother said without preamble. I know about Emma and Marcus. I know you've been living a double life for 5 years. My father closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. Linda, please let me explain. Oh, you're going to explain. You're going to tell me everything. But first, I want you to know that Sarah has been carrying this secret for a week because she wanted to give you the chance to tell me yourself. So before you say anything else, I want you to thank your daughter for being more honorable than you've been. He looked at me with such gratitude and remorse that I had to look away. Thank you, Sarah. I know how hard this must have been for you. Don't thank me, I said quietly. I should have told her immediately. Now, my mother continued, I want you to tell me everything, from the beginning. And Michael? Her voice became harder. If you lie to me, if you leave out any details, if you try to minimize what you've done, I will make this divorce as difficult and expensive as possible. Divorce. The word hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. My father's face crumpled, but he nodded. I met Rebecca at a conference in Portland 5 years ago, he began, and then he told my mother the same story he had told me, with additional details that made it even worse. How the affair had started gradually, how Rebecca had gotten pregnant, how he had convinced her that he was divorced to avoid complications, how he had been supporting 2 households, dividing his time and resources between 2 families. My mother listened without interruption, her face becoming more stone-like with each revelation. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. 5 years, she said finally. 5 years of lying to my face every single day. 5 years of making love to me while you were making love to someone else. 5 years of telling me we couldn't afford vacations while you were supporting another family. Linda, I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough, but I am so sorry. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught? The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a moment, then said, both. I'm sorry I did it because it was wrong and because it hurt you. But I'm also sorry I got caught because now everything is going to fall apart, and people are going to get hurt even more than they already have. People are going to get hurt more? Michael, people have been getting hurt for 5 years. I've been getting hurt every time you chose them over me. Sarah's been getting hurt every time you canceled plans with us to be with them. Rebecca and her children have been getting hurt by believing in a relationship that was built on lies. I know that. Do you? Because you've had 5 years to stop hurting people, and you chose to keep doing it anyway. My father started crying again, the same broken sobs I had witnessed in his office. I didn't know how to stop. I was in too deep, and I didn't know how to get out without destroying everything. So instead, you destroyed everything anyway, just more slowly. We sat in silence for several minutes, the only sound my father's quiet crying. Finally, my mother stood up. I want you to leave, she said calmly. Linda, please, can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work through it? Work through it? Michael, you have a child with another woman. You've been building a life with someone else for 5 years. What exactly is there to work through? I could end it with Rebecca. I could focus on our marriage, on rebuilding what we had. And abandon your daughter? Abandon Marcus, who sees you as a father figure? I don't know. I don't want to lose you. My mother looked at him with something that might have been pity. You lost me 5 years ago, Michael. You just didn't tell me. Please don't do this. Please don't give up on us. I'm not giving up on us. There is no us anymore. There hasn't been for 5 years. She walked to the front door and opened it, standing there waiting for him to leave. My father looked at her, then at me, his face full of desperate pleading. Sarah, please talk to her. Help me fix this. I shook my head. Dad, I can't fix this. Nobody can fix this. You made choices that have consequences, and this is one of them. He stood up slowly, looking around our living room as if he was memorizing it. When he reached the door, he turned back one more time. I love you both. I know I've done terrible things, but I do love you. Love isn't enough, my mother said quietly. Love without honesty, without fidelity, without respect, that's not love at all. After he left, my mother closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to break down completely. I held her while she cried, both of us grieving for the family we had thought we were and the future we had thought we would have. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and difficult conversations. My mother filed for divorce immediately, and my father moved into a small apartment across town. He called every day at first, begging for another chance, promising he would end things with Rebecca if my mother would just consider reconciliation. But my mother was done. The woman I had known my entire life, the one who saw the best in everyone, who believed in second chances, who had built her marriage on trust and forgiveness, had been replaced by someone harder, more realistic about the depths of betrayal possible in human relationships. I could forgive an affair, she told me one evening as we sorted through old photo albums, deciding what to do with 23 years of memories. If your father had met someone and fallen in love and come to me honestly to end our marriage, I could have respected that. People fall out of love. It happens. But this wasn't that. This was 5 years of elaborate deception. This was him looking me in the eye every morning and every evening while living an entirely different life during the day. This was him making me feel crazy for questioning why he was working so much, why he was so distant, why he never seemed interested in spending time with me anymore. She pulled out a photo of the three of us from my high school graduation and stared at it for a long moment. Look at his face in this picture, Sarah. Look how he's smiling at the camera but not really present. I thought he was just stressed about work that day, but now I realize he was probably thinking about Rebecca and Emma. It was true. Looking at old photos with new knowledge was like seeing them through a different lens. How many family moments had been tainted by my father's divided attention? How many times had he been physically present but emotionally somewhere else? 3 weeks after my mother had thrown him out, my father called me and asked if we could meet for lunch. I almost said no. I was still angry with him, still hurt by his lies and his betrayal of our family. But I was also curious about what he wanted to say, and part of me still missed the father I had thought I knew. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from anywhere we might run into people we knew. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated posture that made him seem smaller than I remembered. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as we sat down with our sandwiches. "I wasn't sure you would." I almost didn't. "Sarah, I want you to know that I'm telling Rebecca the truth. About your mother, about our marriage, about everything." I set down my sandwich and stared at him. "You're just telling her now?" "Dad, it's been 3 weeks since Mom kicked you out. I needed time to figure out how to explain it all." "How to explain it?" "Dad, the explanation is simple. You lied to her for 5 years about being married. You lied about having another family. You convinced her that she was in a relationship with a single father when you were actually a cheating husband." He winced. "I know how it sounds." "Do you?" "Because it sounds like you've been lying to Rebecca just as much as you've been lying to us. It sounds like you've built your entire relationship with her on deception." It wasn't supposed to go on this long. When I first met her, I thought it was just going to be a brief thing. Telling her I was divorced seemed easier than explaining that I was unhappily married. "But you weren't unhappily married, were you? At least not at first. You and Mom were happy until you started dividing your attention between two families." He was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. We were happy. I created the problems in our marriage by checking out of it emotionally. So why did you do it? Why did you start the affair in the first place?" This was the question I had been waiting weeks to ask. I needed to understand what had motivated him to throw away everything we had built as a family. "I was having a midlife crisis, I suppose," he said finally. "I was 42 when I met Rebecca, and I was feeling old and boring and trapped by responsibilities. Your mother and I had settled into a routine that felt more like being roommates than being married. Rebecca was exciting and new, and she made me feel young again. So you decided to have both, the stability of a marriage and the excitement of an affair." I told myself I was just going to enjoy it for a little while, then end it and refocus on our family. But then Rebecca got pregnant, and suddenly it wasn't just about what I wanted anymore. "Why didn't you tell Mom the truth when Rebecca got pregnant? Why didn't you end your marriage honestly instead of trying to maintain both relationships?" "Because I'm a coward," he said simply. "I was too afraid to hurt your mother, too afraid to lose you, too afraid to disrupt the life we had built. So I convinced myself that I could manage both situations without anyone getting hurt." But people were getting hurt. We were all getting hurt, we just didn't know it. I know that now. I knew it then too, really. I just didn't want to face it. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Finally, I asked the question that had been bothering me the most. "Dad, when you were with Rebecca and Emma and Marcus, did you ever think about me and Mom? Did you ever feel guilty?" He looked up at me with such pain in his eyes that I almost regretted asking. "Every day," he said quietly. "Every single day." But the guilt became so constant that I learned to push it aside, to compartmentalize it. When I was with your family, I tried to focus only on you and your mother. When I was with Rebecca's family, I tried to focus only on them. But that's not how life works. You can't just turn your emotions on and off like that. I know, and it was exhausting, trying to be a different person in each situation, trying to remember what I had told each family, trying to keep my stories straight. "Is that why you seem so distant lately? Why you and Mom started having problems?" "Partly, but also because maintaining two relationships is impossible. I was giving each family half of myself, which meant neither family was getting what they needed from me." I thought about this for a moment. "What's going to happen with Rebecca now that you've told her the truth?" His face crumpled. "She's devastated. She feels like our entire relationship was a lie, which I guess it was. She's talking about moving back to Sacramento to be closer to her family." "What about Emma and Marcus?" "Emma doesn't really understand what's happening. She just knows that Daddy seems sad all the time now. But Marcus understands more. He's asking a lot of questions about why I lied, whether I ever really cared about him." Do you? Do you really care about him?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I know that's hard to believe, given everything I've done, but I do love Marcus. And Emma. They're innocent in all of this. So are me and Mom. I know. Sarah, I know I've hurt everyone I was supposed to protect. I know I've been selfish and weak and that there's probably no way to make up for what I've done. Then why are you telling me all this? What do you want from me? I want you to know that I'm sorry. I want you to know that even though I've made terrible choices, you are still the most important thing in my life. Am I? Because for the past 5 years, it sure seemed like Emma was more important. It seemed like Rebecca's family was getting your time and attention and energy. That's not true. Isn't it? Dad, when was the last time we went on a father-daughter trip? When was the last time you took me somewhere special, just the two of us? When was the last time you seemed excited to spend time with me? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. We both knew he couldn't think of a recent example. You took Emma to Disney World, I continued. You took her to the one place I had been begging to go for years, and you never even told us you were going. Do you know how that feels? To know that your father has been giving another child the experiences you wanted? Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to feel replaced. But I do feel replaced. I feel like Emma got the fun, engaged father while I got the tired, distracted version who was always thinking about being somewhere else. We were both crying now, but I felt like I needed to say these things. Needed him to understand the full scope of the damage he had caused. I don't know how to fix this, he said. I don't think you can fix it, Dad. I think some things are just broken permanently. Does that mean you don't want a relationship with me anymore? The question hung between us, heavy with implications for our future. Did I want a relationship with my father? Could I forgive him for lying to me for 5 years? Could I trust him again? I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't even know if I like who you turned out to be. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand that this isn't just about you cheating on Mom. This is about you lying to me every day for 5 years. This is about you making me question my own perceptions when I sensed that something was wrong. This is about you betraying the trust I've had in you since I was born. I know, and I know I can't expect your forgiveness just because I'm sorry. No, you can't. We finished lunch in relative silence, both of us emotionally drained by the conversation. As we prepared to leave, my father reached across the table and touched my hand. Sarah, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but would you consider meeting Rebecca and Emma? I think it might help everyone involved if we could find a way to move forward together. I pulled my hand away. Dad, I'm not ready for that. I'm barely ready to have lunch with you. I can't handle meeting your other family right now. I understand, but maybe someday. Maybe, I don't know. A week later, my father called again with news that would complicate our situation even further. Rebecca is pregnant again, he said without preamble when I answered the phone. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. What? She found out yesterday. She's about 6 weeks along, which means it happened right before everything came out. I sank onto my bed, trying to process this information. Another child. Another complication in an already impossible situation. What is she going to do? She doesn't know yet. She's talking about moving back to Sacramento to be near her family, but that would mean I wouldn't see Emma or Marcus regularly. And now, with another baby coming... Dad, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think you could live this double life forever? I don't know what I thought. I wasn't thinking clearly about anything. Is this baby yours? Yes. Another half-sibling I would probably never know. Another child who would grow up in the wreckage of my father's choices. I need to tell your mother, I said. She's going to find out eventually anyway, and it's better if it comes from us. I know. I was hoping you could help me figure out how to tell her. Dad, I'm not going to help you deliver bad news to Mom anymore. You're going to have to learn to clean up your own messes. You're right, I'm sorry. That evening, I told my mother about Rebecca's pregnancy. She listened quietly, her face revealing nothing, then poured herself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table staring out the window. Another baby, she said finally. Mom, are you okay? I'm thinking about the timing. 6 weeks along means she got pregnant right around the time you discovered their relationship. I hadn't thought about that, but she was right. Rebecca had gotten pregnant almost exactly when everything started falling apart. What does that mean? It means your father was still sleeping with her even after you confronted him. It means that while he was begging me to give him another chance, he was still maintaining his relationship with her. The implications of this hit me like a physical blow. Even after being caught, even after promising to figure out how to fix things, my father had continued lying to all of us. Mom, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Your father has made his choices, and now we all have to live with the consequences. Are you going to be okay? She turned to look at me, and I was surprised to see that she looked more resolute than devastated. You know what, Sarah? I think I am going to be okay. For the first time in months, I feel like I can see clearly. Your father isn't the man I thought I married, and our marriage wasn't what I thought it was. But I'm still me, and you're still you, and we're going to build a new life that doesn't depend on him. Really? Really? We're going to be fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. We're going to be happy. 6 months after my mother filed for divorce, our lives had settled into a new rhythm that was both strange and surprisingly peaceful. The constant tension that had filled our house during those final months of my parents' marriage had been replaced by a calm honesty that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. My mother threw herself into her work at the library and started taking evening classes in library science. She was considering pursuing a master's degree, something she had always wanted to do, but had put off while focusing on our family. I have time now, she told me one evening as she worked on an assignment at the kitchen table. Time to figure out what I want my life to look like. I was working at a local bookstore and had enrolled in online classes to finish my bachelor's degree. Without the emotional chaos of my parents' failing marriage, I found it easier to focus on my own goals and dreams. My father called every few weeks, usually to update me on the legal proceedings or to ask if I was ready to meet Rebecca and Emma. I wasn't. I couldn't imagine sitting across from the woman who had been unknowingly sharing my father with us for 5 years. Couldn't imagine making small talk with the little girl who had the same eyes as me and the same laugh as my father. In November, 8 months after everything had fallen apart, Rebecca called me directly. I was working at the bookstore when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, is this Sarah? The voice was soft, uncertain. Yes, who is this? This is Rebecca. Your father, Michael. He gave me your number. I hope you don't mind me calling. I felt my heart start racing. What do you want? I wanted to talk to you about everything that's happened, about what we do now. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just for a few minutes. I know this is hard for you, but it's hard for me too. And for Emma and Marcus. Something in her voice, a vulnerability that reminded me of my own pain, made me reconsider. Okay, but just for a few minutes. Thank you. First, I want you to know how sorry I am. I had no idea about you and your mother. If I had known, I never would have continued the relationship. But you did continue it, for 5 years. Because I didn't know. Michael told me he was divorced, that he had joint custody of his daughter. I thought the reason I couldn't see him more often was because he was respecting his custody arrangement. I found myself feeling something unexpected. Sympathy for this woman who had been lied to just as much as my mother and I had been. Did you ever suspect anything? I asked. Sometimes. He was always vague about his past, about his ex-wife. He never wanted to talk about it, and I respected that because I thought it was painful for him. And sometimes he would get phone calls that he would step outside to take. Or he would seem distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. But you didn't question it? I did, but he always had explanations that seemed reasonable. He said his ex-wife was difficult, that co-parenting was stressful, that he was trying to keep his old life separate from his new one to avoid complications. What about Emma? Didn't you think it was strange that he could only see her certain days? He said he was respecting his custody schedule with you. He said he wanted to be fair to both his daughters. The irony was painful. My father had used his supposed commitment to me as an excuse for not being available to Rebecca and Emma full-time, when in reality, he was using his commitments to them as an excuse for being emotionally unavailable to my mother and me. Rebecca, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you calling me? What do you want from this conversation? She was quiet for a moment. I guess I want to know if there's a way for us to coexist peacefully. Emma's going to grow up knowing she has an older sister. Marcus already knows about you and asks about you sometimes. I don't want them to grow up thinking of you as the enemy. I'm not the enemy, but I'm not ready to be part of your family either. I understand. But maybe someday we could find a middle ground? Maybe the children could know each other, even if we never become close? I thought about this little girl who shared half my DNA, who probably had some of the same mannerisms as me, who would grow up wondering about the sister she had never met. Maybe, I said, but not now. I need more time. I understand. And Sarah, Your father loves you very much. I know that doesn't make up for what he's done, but I see how much he misses you. He talks about you all the time." "He talks about me to you?" "He always has. Even when I thought you were just his daughter from his previous marriage, he talked about how proud he was of you, how smart you were, how much he loved you." This information should have comforted me, but instead it made me angry. If he loved me so much, why had he risked losing me? If he was so proud of me, why had he lied to me for 5 years? "Rebecca, I have to go, but thank you for calling. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry you were lied to, too." "Thank you, Sarah. Take care of yourself." After we hung up, I sat in the back room of the bookstore and cried for the first time in weeks. Not just for myself or my mother, but for Rebecca and Emma and Marcus, who had also been victims of my father's deception. A few weeks later, my mother came home from work with news that would change our situation once again. "I ran into your father at the grocery store today," she said as she unpacked her bags. "We talked for a while." "How was that?" "Difficult, but also illuminating." I waited for her to elaborate, but she seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "He told me that Rebecca had the baby last week, a little boy named Lucas. Another brother, another child I would probably never know." "How does that make you feel?" I asked. "Sad mostly, not jealous anymore, just sad. Sad that there are all these children who are part of your father's life, but not part of ours. Sad that our family is fractured in a way that can never be repaired." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if he had just told you the truth 5 years ago? If he had come home and said he was in love with someone else and wanted a divorce?" She considered this. "I think I would have been devastated, but I also think I would have respected his honesty. I think we could have found a way to co-parent you and maintain some kind of friendship. And now? Now I don't think I can ever forgive him. Not for falling in love with someone else, but for the years of lies. For making me question my own sanity when I sensed something was wrong. For using our love and trust against us." That night, I called my father and told him I was ready to meet Rebecca and Emma. Not because I had forgiven him, but because I needed to see them for myself. Needed to understand this other family that had been sharing him with us. We arranged to meet at a park the following weekend. My mother offered to come with me for moral support, but I felt like this was something I needed to do alone. I arrived at the park 15 minutes early and sat on a bench, watching families play with their children and wondering what I was going to say to this little girl who was my sister but also a stranger. At exactly 2 o'clock, I saw my father walking across the grass with a woman and a little girl. Rebecca looked exactly like she had in those photos I'd seen in his phone, but somehow smaller and more fragile in person. Emma was beautiful, dark hair like mine, but my father's eyes and smile. They approached slowly, and I could see that Rebecca was nervous too. Emma was holding my father's hand and chattering about something, oblivious to the tension between the adults. "Sarah," my father said when they reached my bench, "thank you for coming." I stood up feeling awkward and uncertain. "Hi, Emma," my father said, crouching down to the little girl's level. "This is Sarah. She's your big sister." Emma looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. "You're really tall," she said seriously. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "You're really short." She giggled, and the sound was so genuine and sweet that I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Do you want to push me on the swings?" she asked. I looked at Rebecca, who nodded encouragingly. "Sure." For the next hour, I played with Emma while Rebecca and my father talked quietly on a nearby bench. Emma was exactly what I would have expected from my father's daughter. Smart, funny, confident, and completely unaware of the complicated adult emotions swirling around her. "Daddy says you're in college," she said as I pushed her swing. "What do you study?" "I'm studying English literature. I like to read books." "I like books too. Daddy reads to me every night." Every night, which meant he was still spending every evening with Rebecca's family while my mother and I built our new life without him. "What's your favorite book?" I asked. "The one about the princess who saves the dragon instead of the prince saving her." I laughed. "That sounds like a good one." When it was time to go, Emma hugged my legs tightly. "Will you come play with me again?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, and I meant it. Rebecca walked over to us, carrying a sleeping baby in a car seat. This was Lucas, my newest half-brother, who looked exactly like my father had in his baby pictures. "Thank you for meeting us," Rebecca said quietly. "I know how hard this must be for you." "It's hard for all of us," I replied. Emma talks about you a lot now. She's excited to have a big sister. I looked down at Emma, who was now holding my father's hand and swinging it back and forth. She's a sweet kid, I said. She is. And Sarah, I want you to know that I never meant to be part of breaking up your family. If I had known the truth... I know. My father is very good at telling people what they want to hear. She nodded sadly. Yes, he is. As they prepared to leave, my father approached me hesitantly. Thank you for doing this, he said. It means everything to Emma to know her big sister. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for her. She didn't choose any of this. I know, and Sarah, I'm still hoping that someday we can repair our relationship too. Dad, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I can trust you again. I understand, but I'm not going to stop hoping. I watched them walk away, Emma skipping between her parents, chattering about her new big sister. They looked like a normal, happy family, and I found myself wondering if they were happier now that the lies were over, now that Rebecca knew the truth about my father's past. Driving home, I thought about the strange turns my life had taken over the past year. I had gained siblings I barely knew, lost the father I had thought I understood, and watched my mother become stronger and more independent than she had ever been. When I got home, my mother was in the kitchen making dinner for the two of us, a ritual we had developed that felt more intimate and peaceful than the family dinners we used to have. How did it go? She asked. Better than I expected. She's really sweet and smart. She reminds me of myself at that age. How do you feel about that? Confused, sad, but not angry at her. She's innocent in all this. What about Rebecca? I think I understand why Dad was attracted to her. She's kind and genuine, and she clearly loves her children. But I also think she's been just as betrayed as we have. My mother nodded thoughtfully. Your father has a gift for making people believe what he wants them to believe. Mom, do you think he's capable of change? Do you think he's learned anything from all this? She considered the question while stirring the sauce for our pasta. I think he's learned that actions have consequences, but I don't think he's learned to value honesty over convenience. Even now, I suspect he's telling each of his families what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. What do you mean? I mean, he's probably telling Rebecca that he's completely committed to their family now, while telling you that he regrets everything and wants to rebuild our relationship. He's still trying to make everyone happy instead of just being honest about who he is and what he wants. This observation hit me hard because I realized she was probably right. Even in our recent conversations, my father had seemed more focused on managing my emotions than on taking full responsibility for his choices. Do you think he'll ever change? I hope so, for the sake of all those children. But Sarah, you can't base your decisions about your relationship with him on the hope that he'll become someone different. You have to decide whether you can accept him as he is now. That night, I lay in bed thinking about my mother's words. Could I accept my father as he was? A man who had made terrible choices, who had lied to everyone he claimed to love, who had prioritized his own comfort over the well-being of his families? Could I find a way to have a relationship with Emma and maybe even Marcus without having to rebuild my relationship with my father? Could I forgive him not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting and unproductive? I didn't have answers to any of these questions, but for the first time since discovering his secret family, I felt like I had time to figure them out. The crisis was over, the lies had been exposed, and now we all had to learn to live with the truth. A year after my world fell apart in my father's office parking lot, I was sitting in a coffee shop grading papers from the creative writing class I was teaching at the community college. It was a Saturday afternoon in March, exactly 1 year since the day I had decided to surprise my father with lunch. My phone buzzed with a text message from Emma. Sarah, I lost my first tooth. Daddy says I should tell you because big sisters are important for tooth fairy business. I smiled despite myself. Emma had been texting me regularly since my mother had helped me set up a kid-friendly messaging app on my phone. Her messages were usually about her preschool adventures, her goldfish named Sparkles, or questions about what it was like to be grown up. I texted back, "Congratulations! Did the tooth fairy bring you something special? $1 and a new book. Daddy says you like books too, so maybe you would like this one." Over the past year, I had slowly built a relationship with Emma that existed somewhat independently of my relationship with my father. We texted, we occasionally met at the park or the zoo, and she had even spent an afternoon at my apartment, where I taught her to make chocolate chip cookies. Marcus had been harder to connect with initially. He was more aware of the adult complications and more suspicious of my motives. But gradually, we had found common ground in our shared love of movies and our mutual frustration with my father's poor communication skills. Rebecca and I had developed a cordial but distant relationship. We were polite when we saw each other, we collaborated on Emma's birthday party, and we had even had coffee together once to discuss how to help the children navigate the complexities of our blended but fractured family. But we weren't friends, and we probably never would be. There was too much history, too much pain associated with how we had come to know each other. My father remained the most complicated relationship in this new family dynamic. I saw him occasionally, usually when Emma specifically requested that her whole family be together for something important. But our conversations remained surface level, and I still struggled to trust anything he told me. He was still living with Rebecca and their children, still playing the role of devoted father and partner. But I often wondered if he had really changed, or if he was simply in a situation where it was harder for him to lie because all his secrets had already been exposed. My mother, meanwhile, had flourished. Her divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier, and she had started dating a retired teacher named David who treated her with the respect and honesty she deserved. She had also been promoted to head librarian and had started a book club that met at our house every month. "I feel like myself again," she told me recently. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm living authentically." Watching her rebuild her life had been one of the few positive things to come out of our family's destruction. She was happier, more confident, and more engaged with the world than she had been in the final years of her marriage. As for me, I was still figuring things out. I had finished my bachelor's degree and was teaching part-time while considering whether to pursue a master's degree in education. I was dating someone, a sweet, honest man named Jake who knew my entire family history and somehow didn't run away screaming. And I was slowly learning to trust again. The experience of discovering my father's double life had changed me in fundamental ways. I was more skeptical of people's motivations, more aware of the capacity for deception in human relationships, and more careful about trusting others with my heart. But I was also more resilient, more independent, and more appreciative of genuine honesty and integrity when I encountered it. That afternoon in the coffee shop, I finished grading papers and called my mother to make dinner plans. As we were talking, Emma called on the other line. "Sarah, can you come over? Daddy is making pancakes for dinner, and he says they're not as good as yours, but I want to compare them." I found myself laughing at the innocent competition this 4-year-old was creating between me and our father. "I can't tonight, Em, but maybe next weekend." "Promise?" "Promise." After we hung up, my mother asked if I ever regretted getting involved with Emma and Marcus. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "It would be easier to just cut all ties with Dad's other family and move on completely. But Emma didn't choose any of this, and she deserves to have a relationship with her sister if she wants one. And it helps that she's adorable." "It doesn't hurt," I agreed. But mostly, I think I needed to see them for myself. I needed to understand that they weren't villains in our story. They were just people who got caught up in Dad's lies, just like we did. "Do you think you'll ever forgive your father?" It was a question I had been asking myself for a year, and I still didn't have a clear answer. "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word," I said finally. "I don't think I'll ever be okay with what he did, and I don't think I'll ever trust him the way I used to. But I'm trying to let go of the anger because carrying it around was making me miserable." "That sounds like wisdom. It sounds like therapy," I said with a laugh. "Which, by the way, you should consider. It's been really helpful for me." We made plans to meet for dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, and after we hung up, I sat in the coffee shop for a few more minutes, thinking about how much had changed since the previous March. A year ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was and where I came from. I thought I understood my family, my father, and my place in the world. The discovery of my father's secret had shattered all of those certainties and forced me to rebuild my understanding of myself and my relationships from the ground up. It had been the most difficult year of my life, but it had also been the most honest one. I had learned that love without truth isn't really love at all. I had learned that trust, once broken, might never be fully repaired, but that relationships can still exist and even thrive in new forms. I had learned that families come in all shapes and sizes, and that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Most importantly, I had learned that I was stronger than I thought I was. that I could survive having my world turned upside down and still find a way to build something meaningful from the pieces. As I packed up my papers and prepared to leave the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with one more message. This one was from my father. Sarah, I know I don't deserve to ask, but would you consider having lunch with me next week? There are some things I'd like to say to you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, maybe, let me think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And after everything we had been through, that felt like progress. Walking to my car, I thought about the lunch I had planned to bring my father exactly 1 year ago. The turkey sandwich, the cookies, the note that said, "From your favorite daughter." The innocent gesture that had led to the discovery that would change everything. I wondered if I would have made the same choice if I had known what that lunch would lead to. Would I have stayed home, left my parents to work out their problems on their own, preserved my own ignorance and our family's false peace? The answer, I realized, was no. As painful as the truth had been, it was better than living a lie. As difficult as this year had been, it was better than continuing to build my life on a foundation of deception. The random act of kindness that had completely backfired had also been the catalyst for the most honest year of my life. And for that, strange as it seemed, I was grateful.